Good morning. It is Friday, April 2nd, 2021. I'm Karen from Simply Living for Him. I'm here to do my daily devotional, my encouragement from God's Word. Today is Good Friday, so it's the day that we kind of look at Jesus's death on the cross and we reflect, and it can be a somber time as we reflect on his sacrifice on the cross, and then ultimately we look to Sunday knowing that we know what's to come. And that's exactly the point of today's devotional I wanted to look at. I was thinking a lot about the people who were there witnessing Jesus's death, and his loved ones, his mother, even his followers, and how despondent they must have felt, how without hope they must have felt, how just the despair of seeing this happen and thinking, what on earth? First of all, they were probably thinking, what on earth is going to become of us? And it was probably terrifying. And also just, we know the whole story, but they did not. And they didn't understand what was going to happen in just a few days. And so I look at that and I think, how much that can apply to many things in our lives today. What looks so bleak, or what looks hopeless, or what looks to put you in a place of despair, can actually be the birth of something new. We just never know what's down the line. Actually, I talked about that a little bit this week in my podcast. It's called Fear of the Unknown, and we're focusing on what we do know, because when we focus on the unknown, it can be very scary. And I can imagine at that time on Good Friday, Jesus's followers were faced with the unknown and they were fearful. But what a gift to be living today as Christians and to know the end, to know what's going to happen. It says here in John chapter 12, it says in verse 24, "Truly, truly, I say to you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit." And this is the picture of Jesus, right? That he had to die in order to provide a new life and new birth for all of us. And yet, if you think about that, a grain of wheat, right? And it falls to the ground, and you didn't know science, and you didn't know that God created things this way, you would just be like, oh, that's so sad. This, grain has died and gone into the ground. But you don't know that it's going to give birth and life to something new and something beautiful. And so the Christian life is all about, really what we don't know sometimes. And that's okay, because we do know that God has a purpose for all things, and that we are never without hope, and we are never without a promise of a future, and that no matter what happens here on earth, we know that there is a promise someday, that the moment we die here on earth, we are with Jesus. So it truly is a beautiful thing, that there is nothing on this earth that could ever leave us hopeless. And it says in Romans, that nothing can separate us from the love of God. But yet I think of those early Christians, those followers of Jesus that day, they had no idea, and that despair must have been just so overpowering. And what a beautiful gift for us to know that Sunday is coming and what's going to happen. A couple of years ago, my daughter left for college, and I often think of this in light of life today, for any circumstance. When she was leaving, I felt very, very much that I don't want to say despair, not hopeless, but just that dread of her leaving and her time with us changing and being over. And she was starting a new life, at college. And I remember her last Sunday in church before she was to leave. And it was the last Sunday that her worship team was together. They had been singing for a couple of years together every single Sunday. And it brought so much joy to me. And I remember when it was over, I just stood there in church crying. And I just kept saying, I don't want things to change. I just want it to stay how it is right now. And I look back at that and I say, boy, what foolishness. I was a fool to say that, because now, knowing what I know now, she had to go away. She had to leave us to start a new life that is even more beautiful than the one that I knew. See, we only focus on what we know. We can't imagine that there's something greater and better. And yet there was. There's been far greater and far better beyond all that I imagined. So we had to go through that sadness and letting go in order to get where we are today. Doesn't make it easier on a mom's heart. You know, you're going to feel sadness and pain when your little one leaves for the first time. But knowing what I know now, I'm like, how could I have ever wanted things to stay the same? Because now we wouldn't have her living her new life, which is even more beautiful. And I would think, looking back, the followers of Jesus would feel the same way on that Good Friday. How could we not have wanted that to happen? Not that we wanted Jesus to go through that suffering, but knowing what we know now, that we are all raised to life because of Resurrection Sunday, that because Jesus' sacrifice and his death on the cross, and he ultimately rose again, we all have new life. We would have been fools to say, or they would have been fools to say, I just want things to stay the same. You know, maybe they were thinking, we just want to keep following Jesus here on earth. We just want to keep doing this work. But there was a greater purpose and so much more to be done. And just like it says here in John 12:24, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Think of all the fruit from Jesus. That one man's death on the cross and millions then brought to life. Like, it's just, you know, it goes against our human nature. We think death equals despair. It doesn't. In this case, it equals hope and joy and what is to come and new life and new birth and new life for all of us. So sometimes it helps to remember that God knows what he's doing. And even when things look hopeless, there's always hope. There's always a greater purpose, and there's always more beauty and more joy to come. I hope that this encouraged you. And if it did, share it with a friend. Let me know. I wish you a beautiful, beautiful Easter Sunday, celebrating the resurrection of Christ, our new life in him. And until the next time, I wish you all the blessings and joy in Jesus today.